Welcome, everyone. Today's series reveals why most budgets collapse, not because people are bad with money, but because traditional budgeting ignores human psychology and shows you how to build a calm, purpose-driven system that actually works in real life. Let's go. The hidden psychology behind budget failure. You've tried budgeting before, haven't you? You downloaded the app. You built the spreadsheet. You promised yourself this time would be different. And for the first week, it was. You tracked every expense. You felt proud every time you typed in a number. But then, life happened. A surprise dinner invite. A birthday gift you forgot about. That emergency gas refill when prices spiked overnight. Suddenly, your perfect plan wasn't perfect anymore. And by the third week, you weren't even opening the app. Sound familiar? If it does, you're not alone. Studies show that around 90% of budgets fail. Yes, 90. But the real question isn't how many fail, it's why they fail. And the answer isn't laziness, it isn't irresponsibility, it's psychology. Most budgets are designed for math, not for humans. The illusion of control. Let's be honest, budgeting sounds simple on paper. Spend less than you earn. Save the difference. Repeat forever. But if it were really that simple, everyone would be financially secure by now. Because budgeting isn't about spreadsheets, it's about self-control. And self-control is fragile. In psychology, there's a concept called ego depletion. It means the more decisions you make in a day, the weaker your willpower becomes. By the end of a long workday, your brain is tired. It's more emotional, more impulsive, more likely to say, "Forget it, I deserve this treat." That's why you can start your morning eating oatmeal and end your night with pizza. And the same thing happens with money. You start your month saying, "This time I'll stick to the plan." Then, halfway through, your brain, drained from 1,000 other decisions, gives in to the smallest temptation. A coffee, a sale, a subscription. It's not weakness, it's biology. Humans aren't wired to handle constant restraint. We are wired to seek relief, reward, and pleasure. Meet Jessica. Jessica is 28. She works a 9 to 5 in Chicago. At the start of January, she swore this would be her money glow-up year. She downloaded a beautiful new app, categorized every expense, color-coded every section. She was determined. Week 1 went great. She declined dinner invites, packed lunch, and even bragged to a friend about her new financial discipline. But by week 2, reality showed up uninvited. Her co-worker's birthday, $45 gone. 3 rushed mornings meant 3 Starbucks runs, $18 gone. Car registration renewal, $180 gone. Her perfect budget shattered. She tried adjusting categories, fudging numbers to make them look right, but deep down, she felt like she'd already failed. By week 3, she stopped tracking. By week 4, she deleted the app. And by February, she said what millions of smart, hard-working people say every year: budgeting just doesn't work for me. But Jessica isn't lazy. She's human. Her budget didn't account for the way humans actually behave, the emotional side of money. See, money isn't just about math, it's about emotion. Comfort, fear, pride, and even identity. When you buy that latte, it's not about caffeine, it's about comfort. When you shop online after a bad week, it's not about the clothes, it's about control. When you give to family or friends even when you can't afford it, it's not about generosity, it's about love and belonging. But most budgets ignore all of that. They treat spending like a purely logical act. They forget that every transaction carries an emotional story, and that's why they fail. In London, a teacher named Rachel tried to copy a finance influencer's no-spend challenge. She lasted 9 days. Not because she couldn't resist temptation, but because her small joys, her morning croissant, her weekend market trip, were part of her identity. Cutting them out felt like cutting off her personality. Psychologists call this reactance. When people feel their freedom is being taken away, they rebel. often by doing exactly the opposite of what they're supposed to. That's why strict diets lead to binges, and strict budgets lead to splurges. The more you restrict, the more you crave freedom. So, the very act of trying to be disciplined can backfire if your plan feels like punishment. The over-restriction trap. Imagine starting a diet that says no sugar, no carbs, no snacks, no fun. You might make it a week. Then someone brings donuts to the office. You tell yourself, just one. Then, I've already messed up, might as well enjoy it. That's exactly what happens with budgets that cut out all joy. They ban coffee. They forbid dinners out. They demand monk-like restraint. And when you finally break the rule, your brain says, see? You failed again, but here's the thing. You didn't fail. The system failed you, because any budget that requires perfection in an imperfect world is doomed from the start. The myth of the perfect month. Most people build budgets assuming that every month will behave the same way. Rent, groceries, bills, repeat. But life doesn't follow a spreadsheet. The car breaks down, your friend invites you to a wedding, rent increases, energy prices spike, a child gets sick, an unexpected tax bill arrives. The truth is, there's no such thing as a normal month. In Europe, winter brings heating costs that double. In the US, summer means road trips, barbecues, and rising electricity bills. Every season brings a new curveball. And yet, most people design budgets as if the world were static, as if the same expenses would magically repeat. So when real life happens, their perfect plan collapses. Then they feel shame, guilt, and frustration, and slowly they start believing a lie. I'm just not good with money. But that's not true. The problem isn't you, it's the plan. The scarcity mindset. Now, let's talk about one of the most dangerous psychological traps of all: scarcity. When your budget screams, you can't spend on fun, your brain hears, you're poor, and that triggers fear. Scarcity thinking makes you obsess over what you can't have. It's the same mental mechanism that makes people crave junk food when they start a diet. A researcher once found that people who were shown words related to poverty made worse financial decisions immediately afterward. Why? Because scarcity narrows focus. Your brain becomes obsessed with short-term relief, not long-term progress. That's why, when you feel broke, you might say, I deserve this, and buy something small to feel better. That instant gratification gives temporary dopamine, but sabotages your long-term goals. Scarcity doesn't inspire discipline. It creates desperation, and desperation destroys clarity. So when your budget feels like a punishment instead of a plan, your mind will find ways to escape it, consciously or unconsciously. Decision fatigue, the silent killer of budgets. Picture this. Monday morning, you log your $3 coffee. Lunch, you record your $12 sandwich. Evening groceries, you input 17 separate items. Gas, you enter $42.17. By day 4, you're exhausted. Not physically, mentally. Tracking every penny feels noble for the first week, but over time, it drains your willpower. Psychologists call it decision fatigue, the mental exhaustion that builds up from making too many small decisions. And guess what budgeting requires? Hundreds of tiny financial decisions. That's why so many people start strong and fade quickly. The truth is, no one can sustain that level of mental load forever. The brain seeks simplicity. That's why simple frameworks, like the 50-30-20 rule or automation, work better. They reduce the number of choices you have to make daily, because every decision you automate is one less opportunity to fail. The invisible influence of identity. Here's something almost no financial coach talks about. You spend in ways that confirm who you think you are. If you see yourself as a generous friend, you'll give even when you can't afford to. If you see yourself as a successful professional, you might overspend to maintain that image. If you see yourself as someone who's bad with money, you'll subconsciously make choices that prove it true. Budgets fail because they don't align with identity. They try to change behavior without changing belief. But your actions will always return to what your identity allows. You can't behave consistently in a way that conflicts with your self-image. That's why people can follow a plan for a few weeks, but eventually snap back to old habits. Their subconscious says, "This isn't me." So if your budget doesn't reflect who you want to become, you'll always fight it. Rigid rules in a flexible world. There's another reason 90% of budgets fail. They leave no room for life. A brittle branch snaps under pressure. A bamboo stalk bends and survives. Your budget must bend. You will overspend sometimes. You will forget birthdays. You will have emergencies. That's not failure. That's life. But most budgets are built like glass. They shatter with the first hit. One unexpected expense, and the entire system collapses. The solution isn't more rules, it's more flexibility, a miscellaneous category, a small buffer fund, a mindset that says, "I can adjust," instead of, "I messed up." That single shift, from rigidity to resilience, can save your entire plan. The shame spiral. When a budget fails, most people don't just lose money, they lose confidence. They start telling themselves stories. "I'm irresponsible. I'll never get this right. I'm just not disciplined enough." That inner dialogue becomes identity, and identity drives behavior. Once someone believes they're bad with money, they act accordingly. They stop checking their accounts. They avoid their bank app. They hide bills until it's too late. Psychologists call this learned helplessness. After repeated failure, the brain stops trying. It convinces itself that effort doesn't matter. And that's where most people stay stuck. But the truth is, you don't fail because you're weak. You fail because you're fighting the wrong battle. You've been told that budgeting is about discipline, but it's really about design. That the psychology of failure. How your brain sabotages good intentions. You've probably heard the saying, "Money is emotional," but few people really understand what that means. Because if money were purely logical, nobody would overspend on Black Friday. Nobody would buy something they can't afford just because it's on sale. Nobody would swipe a card for comfort. Yet billions of people do exactly that every single day. And not because they're foolish, but because their brains are wired for survival, not savings. The dopamine trap. Let's start with dopamine, the chemical that drives almost every impulse decision you make. Every time you see a discount, your brain lights up. Every time you add something to a cart, your brain releases a small shot of dopamine. And when you finally hit purchase, boom, reward center activated. It's the same biological mechanism that makes gambling addictive, junk food irresistible, and social media scrolls endless. Your brain isn't addicted to spending, it's addicted to anticipation. That thrill you feel when shopping online, that little burst of excitement. It's not the product that hooks you, it's the promise of reward. That's why, once the package arrives, the excitement fades so fast. The dopamine spike disappears, and your brain starts craving the next hit. For many people, this cycle becomes a subconscious coping mechanism. Bad day at work, shopping, feeling lonely, shopping, stressed about bills, ironically, shopping again. The very act of buying gives a short-term illusion of control, even if it damages long-term security. This isn't stupidity, it's neurochemistry. You can't outsmart dopamine with spreadsheets. You can only redirect it with systems that create positive anticipation, like seeing your savings grow or your debt shrink. The reward relief loop. Now imagine this. You spend impulsively, then guilt kicks in. To relieve the guilt, you tell yourself, "Next month will be better." But when next month comes and stress returns, you spend again to feel relief. This is called the reward relief loop. You get dopamine when you spend. You get relief when you justify it. and both of those feelings reinforce the habit. Over time, spending stops being about what you buy and becomes a psychological feedback loop. It's not about shoes, coffee, or gadgets. It's about mood regulation. The same way some people use food to feel better, others use money. And when you attach emotion to money, logic disappears. The illusion of future you. Here's another mental trap: present bias. Your brain values today more than tomorrow. That's why saving for retirement feels boring, but buying new clothes feels exciting. That's why millions of people in both the US and Europe struggle with short-term temptation despite long-term goals. We all believe future me will be more disciplined. Future me will stick to the budget. Future me will start saving. Future me will fix the debt. But when tomorrow becomes today, future me becomes present me again, with the same habits and emotions. Economists call this time inconsistency. Psychologists call it optimism bias. You call it next month will be different. And it's one of the main reasons budgets fail. They depend on a version of you that doesn't yet exist. The anchor effect. Now let's talk about another sneaky mental trap: anchoring. Anchoring is when your brain locks onto the first piece of information it sees and treats it as truth, even when the world changes. If your salary went up, your brain starts believing that's your new normal. If your rent used to be $800 and now it's $1,200, you still think of $800 as the right price and feel cheated every month. If your grocery bill used to be $100 and inflation pushed it to $160, you still feel like something's wrong. Anchoring creates emotional resistance to financial reality. You tell yourself it shouldn't cost this much, but it does. And instead of adjusting the budget, you fight the truth, overspending while blaming circumstance. Anchoring keeps you living in the past while your finances operate in the present. The comfort of denial. Denial might be the most human budget killer of all. When people avoid checking their bank account, it's not ignorance, it's emotional protection. Your brain avoids pain, even if the avoidance causes more pain later. That's why some people don't open bills for days, why others refuse to calculate their total debt, why some skip reviewing credit statements entirely. It's not laziness, it's anxiety management. The human brain treats financial stress like physical danger. It triggers the same fight or flight response. Heart rate increases. Cortisol floods your system. Focus narrows to escape. In prehistoric times, that response kept you alive. In modern times, it makes you avoid your own budget. So every time your plan feels overwhelming, your brain's ancient wiring whispers, "Don't look. Don't deal with it now. You'll fix it later." That's not a flaw in your character, it's a flaw in evolution. Why logic can't fix emotion. Here's the cruel irony. Most budgeting advice is built entirely on logic. Track expenses, spend less, stick to limits. But emotion always wins. You can't logic your way out of an emotional impulse. You can't spreadsheet away a dopamine craving. You can't rationalize with anxiety. That's why so many smart, educated people fail with money. Because budgeting isn't a math problem, it's a behavioral problem. And once you understand that, you can stop blaming yourself and start building systems that work with your psychology, not against it. The habit loop. Psychologists use a simple model called the cue routine reward loop. 1. A cue triggers behavior: stress, boredom, payday. 2. The routine follows: spending, scrolling, swiping. 3. The reward ends the loop: pleasure, relief, distraction. To change a financial habit, you can't just remove the routine, you must replace the reward. For example, if your cue is stress and your reward is comfort, then simply banning spending won't work. You have to find another reward that provides comfort without costing money, like journaling, walking, or connecting with friends. Habits don't disappear, they evolve. The same loop that once drove mindless spending can also drive mindful saving if you change what the brain expects at the end. The ego trap of smart people. Here's something fascinating. The smarter you are, the worse your budgeting mistakes can be, because intelligence breeds confidence, and confidence can become overconfidence. Smart people believe they can outthink their emotions. They believe they can manage complex spreadsheets. They believe they can handle temptation with discipline. But money doesn't care how smart you are, it only cares how consistent you are. That's why you'll find engineers, doctors, lawyers, people with advanced degrees drowning in debt while a factory worker or teacher quietly builds wealth. Because money rewards behavior, not IQ. A Harvard or Oxford degree can't protect you from dopamine or denial. And understanding economics doesn't mean you'll follow your own rules when you're stressed at midnight. The mind that solves complex equations can still fail simple emotional tests. Budgeting isn't an intelligence challenge, it's a humility challenge. The shame spending paradox. Now let's talk about something painful, but real. When people feel shame about their money, they often spend more, not less. It sounds irrational, but shame and spending feed each other. You feel embarrassed about your financial mistakes, so you buy something small to feel better. That purchase gives you temporary relief, but adds to the problem. Then the guilt comes back stronger, and you repeat the cycle. It's called emotional compensation spending, and it's one of the biggest reasons why people who know better still make the same mistakes. The only way to break the cycle isn't through stricter budgeting, it's through self-compassion. You can't hate yourself into better habits. You have to forgive yourself into consistency. Because when you stop treating money mistakes as moral failures, you free your mind to actually learn from them. Culture, comparison, and the pressure to perform. In America, the pressure to look successful is relentless. In Europe, it's more subtle, the quiet competition of lifestyle and travel. Social media amplifies both. You open Instagram, and what do you see? Vacations in Greece, luxury brunches in London, Tesla deliveries in California, everyone's highlight reel. Your brain doesn't see the debt, the loans, or the stress behind those photos. It just sees status. And comparison triggers envy, which triggers spending. Psychologists call it social proof, the tendency to copy what we think successful people do. So even if you know rationally that those images are curated, your emotional brain still whispers, "I'm falling behind. I deserve to treat myself too. I can't look poor." Suddenly, your budget isn't about numbers anymore. It's about identity management, trying to prove your worth through spending. That's why financial self-sabotage is so common in the age of visibility, because we don't just spend money to live, we spend to belong. The neuroscience of resistance. Let's go even deeper. When you try to change a financial habit, your brain interprets it as a threat. Why? Because habits are designed for efficiency. They save energy. Change consumes energy. So every time you try to start a new system, your brain resists to protect itself. That resistance can feel like procrastination, doubt, or fear. But really, it's your brain saying, "Let's stay comfortable." Even if comfortable means broke. That's why people cling to old money patterns long after they stop working. Their brain associates those patterns with safety. Breaking that resistance requires awareness, not force, because you can't bulldoze your brain into change. You have to lead it gently. That's where psychology meets finance. The real enemy isn't money, it's unawareness. Most people think their problem is financial. It's not. The real problem is lack of awareness. You can't improve what you refuse to see. You can't fix what you never measure. You can't grow what you don't understand. That's why awareness, not restriction, is the first step toward a working budget. When you see where your money truly goes, patterns emerge, and patterns tell stories. Stories about emotion, stories about identity, stories about what really matters to you. And once you can read those stories, you can finally rewrite them. The blueprint for change and the emotional transformation ahead. You've come a long way. By now, you understand the real reason most budgets fail. They ignore how humans actually think and feel. You've seen the mental traps that pull people back and the quiet systems that set a small group free. Now it's time to take that insight and turn it into a personal blueprint, one that works in real life, not just on paper. Step 1. Awareness before action. Before you touch another spreadsheet or download another app, stop and look honestly at where your money actually goes. Pull the last 3 months of bank statements. Highlight everything: housing, food, transport, subscriptions, entertainment. Add it up. This step is not about guilt, it's about truth. Because you can't fix what you won't face. Awareness transforms chaos into clarity. In Milan, Sophia did this for the first time and discovered that her small coffee habit cost more than her phone bill. She didn't shame herself. She adjusted. She built a plan that included coffee, but capped it reasonably. Awareness replaces shame with data, and data brings power. Step 2. Choose a framework that fits you. There is no universal method. The right budget is the one you'll actually follow. If you love structure and detail, try zero-based budgeting. If you hate tracking, try the anti-budget. If you want a middle ground, the 50-30-20 rule gives balance. The secret is fit, not fashion. Don't chase someone else's system. Tailor your own. In Paris, Julien thrives on detailed tracking because it gives him control. In New York, Maya prefers the simplicity of one automatic transfer and peace of mind. Different brains, different blueprints, both succeed. Step 3. Automate the essentials. Once you've chosen a system, automate the critical pieces. Savings first, bills next, investments right after. Automation is financial discipline on autopilot. Every month that your system runs without effort, your confidence grows. And the less you rely on willpower, the stronger your results become. Think of automation as your quiet assistant, working in the background while you focus on living. Step 4. Build flexibility into the plan. Rigid systems crack under pressure. Add a miscellaneous buffer for small surprises. Create sinking funds for big, irregular costs: travel, holidays, maintenance. Keep a small cushion in checking so emergencies don't cause panic. Flexibility turns guilt into grace, because life will interrupt your plan, but it doesn't have to destroy it. When you expect imperfection, mistakes become adjustments instead of excuses. Step 5. Test and refine. Treat your budget like a living experiment, not a fixed rulebook. Run it for 30 days. See what worked, what didn't, and why. Maybe you overspent on food. Fine. Increase that category slightly and trim another. Iteration builds mastery. In Oslo, Henrik reviews his plan monthly like a scientist. He doesn't ask, "Did I fail?" He asks, "What did I learn?" That mindset shift keeps progress steady and stress low. Step 6. Sustain with habits and accountability. Knowledge fades without consistency, so build tiny rituals that keep your financial awareness alive. A weekly 10-minute review, a short check-in with your partner or friend, a mini reward every time you hit a milestone. Accountability transforms quiet effort into long-term momentum. In Barcelona, Anna and Clara hold Sunday balance brunches. They review their numbers, celebrate wins, then close the laptop and enjoy the day. Money stops feeling like a burden when it becomes a shared story. Step 7. Celebrate progress, not perfection. Too many people wait until they're debt-free or wealthy to feel proud. But confidence grows faster when you celebrate the small wins. Paid every bill on time? Celebrate. Avoided impulse shopping this week? Celebrate. Automated your first transfer? That's a victory. Every positive moment tells your brain, this works. And what your brain believes, your behavior repeats. Success is built on repetition, not on grand gestures. The shift from fear to freedom. Budgeting used to mean control. Now it means choice. When you know where your money goes, you reclaim time, peace, and dignity. Bills stop being threats. Savings stop being sacrifices. They become signs of self-respect. In London, Ethan describes his new system like this. I don't feel trapped anymore. For the first time, I feel in control without feeling restricted. That's the emotional transformation, moving from fear to freedom. The two futures. Close your eyes and imagine two versions of your life. Future 1. You keep doing what you've always done. Each month feels like survival. Bills arrive, stress spikes, and the cycle repeats. Future 2. Your bills pay themselves. Savings grow quietly in the background. You spend freely on what you love, guilt-free, because it's part of the plan. Money stops being chaos. It becomes calm. Both futures depend on one thing: whether you design a system that works for you. You are not the problem. If your past budgets failed, hear this clearly. You are not lazy. You are not careless. You are not broken. You were just using tools that ignored your psychology. Now you have better ones. The moment you stop blaming yourself, you create room to improve. Shame freezes growth. Self-forgiveness fuels it. From this point on, every decision you make, every tiny adjustment, builds evidence that you can change, and you can. A small action today. You don't need to overhaul your life overnight. All you need is one action today. Maybe it's reviewing your last 90 days of expenses. Maybe it's setting up a single automatic transfer. Maybe it's telling a friend your savings goal. Small actions compound. One seed today becomes confidence tomorrow. Momentum beats motivation. What comes next? Part 2 of this series will go deeper into the psychology of building lasting financial habits, exploring how identity, behavior, and small automation loops can make wealth creation almost effortless. Because now that you understand why most budgets fail, it's time to learn how to make one thrive, permanently. But before we move on, take a moment. You've faced uncomfortable truths. You've seen how emotion, habit, and culture shape your money story. That awareness is your turning point. Final reflection. Money is not math. It's behavior. It's emotion. It's design. When you build systems that honor all three, you stop surviving and start directing your financial destiny. Remember, a budget isn't a prison. It's a passport, a map that guides you toward the life you actually want. Your power doesn't come from earning more or spending less. It comes from clarity, consistency, and belief. You are not meant to live paycheck to paycheck. You are meant to live with purpose. And that begins the moment you decide to design a system that finally fits you. We shall continue this episode in coming days. Hit the subscribe button to get notification and share for others to benefit. Thank you. You wake up one morning and realize something feels off. You've been working hard, earning, spending, doing your best to keep life moving. Yet when you look at your bank account, it doesn't match the effort you've given. There's that quiet thought in the back of your mind. Where is all my money going? That's the moment most people start searching for answers. Some open an app. Some write numbers in a notebook. Some just sigh and promise to try harder next month. But deep down, everyone is looking for the same thing. A sense of direction, a feeling of control, a way to know that all this work actually leads somewhere. That's where the idea of the budget as a GPS begins. Because a GPS doesn't just tell you where you are, it shows you where you could go. It draws the path between confusion and clarity. When you start treating your money like a journey, everything changes. Suddenly, you're not just spending, you're steering. You're deciding which roads matter. You're noticing the signs along the way. Money is emotional. It's not only numbers and decimals. It's hope, fear, excitement, guilt, pride. It touches almost every corner of your life. How you see yourself, what you think you deserve, what you believe is possible. That's why a budget isn't about rules. It's about awareness. It's about knowing your route so you can travel with confidence instead of anxiety. Think about how you drive with a GPS. When you type in a destination, the system doesn't ask why you took a wrong turn. It simply adjusts, recalculating, still guiding you home. That's how your budget should feel. Steady, calm, flexible. You're not punished for detours. You're supported through them. You learn that mistakes don't erase your progress, they just remind you to look at the map again. Every dollar you spend is like a mile you drive. Every choice carries you closer or further from where you want to go. And the beautiful part? You get to choose the destination. Maybe your goal is peace of mind. Maybe it's to buy your own home. Maybe it's the freedom to travel or to take care of your family without fear. Whatever it is, your budget becomes the voice that says, let's go there together. The moment you begin budgeting with purpose, you stop living on autopilot. You start noticing patterns. You see where the leaks are, where the habits hide. You stop asking, where did my paycheck go? And start saying, I know exactly what every dollar did for me. That awareness builds confidence. Confidence builds consistency. And consistency creates change. But here's the emotional truth. Budgeting can feel scary at first. It forces you to look at your reality without filters. It asks you to face the parts of money you've avoided, the debts, the overspending, the someday I'll fix this promises. It's like turning on the light in a dark room, uncomfortable for a second, but then everything becomes clear. You see the space for what it is, and you realize you can rearrange it any way you want. Money isn't the enemy, it's a tool, and tools are meant to be used, shaped, directed. When you hold that tool with awareness, you build something lasting, a life that reflects your values instead of your worries. A lot of people think budgeting kills joy, but the opposite is true. It creates freedom. Because when you know where your money is going, you can spend it without guilt. You can give, save, and enjoy, all without wondering if you've gone too far. Imagine driving without a GPS, just hoping you end up somewhere nice. That's how many people treat their finances. They go by feeling instead of plan, by impulse instead of intention. Some days it works out, most days it doesn't. And that uncertainty builds stress. Now imagine switching on the map. You see the roads ahead, you see how long the journey will take. You even see where the traffic might slow you down. That's budgeting. Not magic, just clarity. Not control for its own sake, but direction for your dreams. Here's another truth most people forget. A budget isn't static. It evolves with you. Just like a GPS adjusts when you change destinations, your budget shifts as your priorities change. You grow, and so does the map. When you were younger, maybe you wanted things. New clothes, a car, a night out. Now maybe you want security. Maybe you want time. Maybe you want choices. That evolution is beautiful. It means you're living, learning, and steering with purpose. Every budget tells a story, the story of where you've been, where you are, and where you're going. And it's okay if the chapters aren't perfect. A few wrong turns don't erase the journey. Some people see budgeting as math, but in reality, it's storytelling with numbers. Each category is a reflection of what you value. Food, shelter, family, giving, fun, all parts of the same narrative. When you look at your spending, you're looking at your choices. And when you start aligning those choices with your deepest goals, you stop chasing someone else's definition of success. You start designing your own. That's what happens when you take the wheel. You stop drifting in traffic and start moving with intent. You begin to recognize that money doesn't define you, it supports you. It's okay to want nice things. It's okay to dream big. What matters is that you do it with awareness. A GPS doesn't limit where you can go, it just helps you get there safely.